Hey everybody, this is Elon from Inside Fighting, and as you know, I'm a huge fanatic of these obscure martial arts. This one's obscure, but not in the way that most people haven't heard about it. It's often nicknamed the mother of all martial arts. It's one of the oldest martial arts in the world. Stay tuned, this episode is on Kalaripayattu.
Pow pow, inside fighting, yeah, dangerous martial arts. Pow pow, ooh ah.
All right, here we go. Before I jump into Kalaripayattu, I'd love for you to check out InsideFightingStore.com. I have a great instructional on there right now. If you like real hardcore street effective martial arts, then this instructional will definitely be right up your alley. It's my own system. It's called RAID, Rapid Aggressive Intelligent Defense, but it's really a hybrid of Filipino martial arts, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Sambo, and some Muay Thai, all mixed together into a approach that deals with pre-fight confrontation, your flinch response, adrenal stress response. It's a really cool system. If you get it, you don't like it, hit me up and I'll refund you. That's how much I believe in it. Okay, moving on. Kalaripayattu. Now, this is a Indian martial art. It's supposed to be, by most claims, one of the oldest martial arts in the world, if not the oldest martial art. But what we do see now is a resurgence of an ancient system. I want to talk about ancient systems for a little bit. In martial arts, when you look at martial arts, a lot of people, when I was growing up, for example, would say, oh, this martial art is 10,000 years old, 150 million years old. It must be the most effective martial art in the world. I don't know why people had that accent back then, but in my head, that's what they all sounded like. Bottom line is, I used to believe, and people used to believe, that if something was like older, that it had more value, that it somehow was more effective in modern times. The reality of training, and let's just get this out the way so there's no confusion about it, is that modern day training methodologies are good for modern times. Combat sports training methodology is good for combat sports. And martial arts, traditional martial arts methodology, is great for both a certain amount of a martial aspect and the historical art aspect. And so when you go into martial arts, you are not just training for modern day street self-defense exclusively, you are not just training for combat sports exclusively. You might gain certain tool sets which will help you in those situations, but there's far more optimized things for those things, or optimized ways to train for those environments. But what you do get in martial arts is tradition, history, longevity often, and again, it is a martial art. It has an art aspect to it. And so Kalaripayattu is just that. It is an old martial art. I want to just give you this little analogy. If you had been shot in the arm and you needed to get treatment, you would not look for treatment from 5,000-year-old methods of treating your body. You'd look for modern day treatments. You'd go to trauma care in an ER and they would treat you the way we learn to treat people today. Doesn't necessarily mean that because something is older that it is more effective. It's just a shift in my thought process from kind of like early on in life to how I've grown up. And so let's just look at what makes this system very special. There are certain things about this system which I really like. Number one, they have these like specialized training grounds that they created called kalaris. And kalaris have a lot of ritualistic significance in their culture. Some of them are built underground. They dig like 3 feet to 6 feet, and some of them are on the surface. They do tend to have this reddish sand or earth that they train on, and it's supposed to be filled with herbs, which help you heal. So as you're training, if you get a little cut, the herbs in the ground. Is it herbs or herbs? It's a good question. Let me know in the comments section below. Anyway, they train on that, and if supposedly it rubs into their wounds, it might help their wounds heal. There's other significant things about kalaris. Now, I have a computer in front of me just because the language here is out of my league, and I'm going to say this as good as I can. There's certain consistent religious aspects to where they train. There's something called a putra, a ganapatihara, and a gurathara. Now, the putra is like a 7-step little shrine, and it's supposed to, again, it has religious significance. And then the other two are they're praying to a deity, and then they're praying to the, let me just find it here. This is very confusing for me. The Ganapati, who's a Hindu deity, said to remove obstacles. And then the Gurathara is for the guru of Kalari. So there you go. So there's a whole historical aspect to training, and before they train, they do a kind of bow to these 3 shrines, and then they start training. Now, there's 4 aspects to training in Kalari. The main aspects are form, which is kind of like kata or movement. The next one is wooden weapons. So it's interesting. They go from like empty hand forms, which almost look like kind of yoga-ish in some way, but with fighting aspects to it. Very low stances, very, very kind of heavy leg-based positions that'll strengthen your body. And a lot of this is meant to strengthen your body and get you used to the movements so that you can carry out the next steps. The next one is wooden weapons. So you're looking at like short sticks, staff-based stuff, anything that's wooden and not pointed. And so that's step 2. So there's an actual logical progression here. The next one after that is metal-based or edged weapons. What you'd consider in like Filipino martial arts edged weapons. This could be anything from a sword, a spear, a knife. There's something called a urumi, which is a very cool sword. Let me see if I have it here. Urumi sword. These swords are among the coolest swords I've seen. They're like these kind of like whip-like swords that are loose, and you can have multiple of them. And what they used to do is tie them around like a belt, and then they would take it off, and it can be used almost like a whip, but a whip that's just ripping your body apart. One of the cooler weapons with very cool historical significance that I've seen. And the movements with them, man, you got to be good with this thing, because if you mess up, you're going to be chopping up your own body, because they're whipping these around close to their body, and these things move fast. Again, this is a weapon that I haven't really seen anywhere else, and I love weapons-based fighting, and so it's cool always to see unique weapons pop up. And let's just look again now back to this. So those are 3 aspects of training. The last aspect, which again kind of reminds me of Filipino martial arts, is empty hand, your ability to deal with people without a weapon. Now let's look at why they would go in this order. Number 1, it's obvious that they would start with the movements to strengthen your body, get your body capable of doing all the feats that you have to do when you're fighting. That makes sense as a first logical step. The next step is wooden weapons. Wooden weapons make a lot of sense too. Before you're going to be using something like an urumi where you could chop up your whole body, you start with impact weapons. This allows you to go a little faster, allows you to build confidence, allows you to be a little bit more reactive. And again, impact weapons, if you look at poor societies or poor civilizations historically, was a very easy thing to get. They couldn't always get swords, but they could always get, if you were a farmer, you could always create a staff, you could always use some kind of farming tool that would become a weapon. It's why things like jogo de pau in Portugal in these small villages were so popular. And it kind of mimicked the spear. So as you were learning how to use a long staff, you were also learning how to use a spear. The next logical progression from here for warfare, and these systems, this is important, these are old, ancient warfare systems. These are not combat sports. These are systems that were designed to teach you how to fight other warriors in an actual battle. Life or death. You were trying to finish it with weapons. And so the logical progression here is to go to swords and edged weapons, spears, whatever the real warrior class had. And things like the urumi. So the progression here is getting you confident enough to use actual edged weapons like swords. And this is what you would fight with in an actual war or battle. But then why is empty hand last? Empty hand is last because if you really think of true warfare, your ability to fight empty hand is really a last resort. You've probably died if you're getting into an empty hand battle because the other guy probably has a sword or has some kind of weapon, a spear that he's killing you with. Even in modern day times, you look at military warfare. There's this notion that like Navy SEALs are the best hand-to-hand combatants. They could beat an MMA fighter. No, that's false. The majority of training is not going into empty hand training. The majority of training in the military is going into weapons training. If you're a sniper, you got to know how to use your sniper rifle. If you're, whatever it is, if you're using a 300 blackout rifle, that's what your weapon is. That is more important than your hands. The time you're spending shooting rounds is more important than the time you're spending learning how to fight with your hands. Because if you go into hand-to-hand combat in a true war, you are losing. And so that's in my opinion, the logical rationale behind the progression of training. And again, it mimics modern times. What I do like about Kalaripayattu is, number one, this is a resurgence of a martial art that mostly disappeared. And so if you're looking at how it is today, what it is today is trying to preserve and maintain a history that existed thousands of years ago. And so when we look at these things, we often say, well, how is it effective in modern times? There's certain things about Kalaripayattu which I think are good for the body. I think it gives you great conditioning, great strength. if you're looking at like weightless kind of training. I think it does have a breathing and yoga aspect to it when you look at how they hold their forms and how they move. I think it will make you stronger, more effective at fighting than the average person. But I do not think this is a optimized martial art, as I said earlier, for real street self-defense or real fighting. I just don't. I think, again, it has a lot of beauty in terms of the movements, in terms of the choreography, in terms of the reaction times it can build. And if you look at the way they move, it's almost like it's a performance style today. Now, I will say there's a caveat here. There are people who train Kalari differently. There's people who train it with a lot of sparring. There's even a Kalari competition where people spar. But if you look at how they spar, it starts looking almost like the Pencak Silat tournaments. They're doing a lot of kind of centerline kicking, side kicking, and then going for takedowns. It's an interesting progression of a style, but again, it's not representing the true nature of the style, which is this weapon-based warfare. I've come to accept that when I'm training an ancient style for weapon-based warfare, I should honor that aspect of the training. It doesn't have to become a sport. It doesn't need this kind of modern-day sparring. Again, that doesn't necessarily take away from what the style is. I get all that elsewhere. When I started this channel, I started it to find the positive in martial arts. And what I realized is I've been training martial arts almost my entire life. I have a history behind me of sparring. I have a history behind me of combat sports, competing, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, all that stuff. So I come at it from a biased perspective. I've already done the other stuff, and I really enjoy this end of training. But if you were to come to me and say, should I train Kalaripayattu as a self-defense system? The answer would be no, it's not the right choice. But again, if you look at the movements, they're doing a lot of movements that will build good reflexes, build strength. It's a unique style. It has amazing historical significance, and it's having a resurgence to kind of honor the Kerala people and their historical martial art. I love that. I always think that that's a very, very cool thing to get into a martial art for. If we look at the movement specifically in this style, again, the thing I like the most is the urumi sword. That is a sword I would want to learn how to use. I would love to chop somebody up coming into my house with that if they were breaking in. Way cooler than using a firearm. And again, it just has these very low, heavy stances. I like that they start off with this body conditioning and body formation. I think this would have incredible health benefits. Something else that I really like about their training, which is not acknowledged in other martial arts as much, is a heavy focus. You do see it. You see like people being like de Dejao and all these different kind of spices and creams to put on your body. But here, massage and recovery is a major part of the system. It's like the fifth leg of the system. I said there was 4 before. And if you look, they get a lot of these very, very effective massages to kind of heal out their bodies after training. They do train very hard. They do a lot of cool acrobatic stuff. But again, and maybe this is just how it evolved in modern times, and this is not to put it down, it is a performance art at this point. It's a performance martial art. You have to go into it and analyze it from that perspective. So again, very cool. I find that the sport aspect of it is trying to fill a gap it doesn't need to fill, but it's nice if you train, Kalaripayattu and you said, I want to have a chance to spar. This gives you a chance to empty-hand spar with a specific rule set. Outside of that, again, just beautiful historical martial art. Look, I hope you like this introduction to Kalaripayattu. Like and subscribe. Let me know what you thought below.